I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Mark, and I'm a 38-year-old husband and father living in a small town in Ohio. My wife Lisa and I had been married for over a decade. We have a 7-year-old son, Ethan, who is the light of my life. Our marriage started off strong, filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. But as the years went by, I noticed a shift in Lisa. Little things changed. She became distant, more focused on her phone, and often made excuses to dodge family activities. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of work and parenting. Lisa was juggling a lot and I tried to be understanding. But something in my gut told me there was more to it. There were subtle signs: her late nights working late at the office, her sudden interest in her appearance, and the countless times she'd snap at me over the smallest issues. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly trying to figure out how to make her happy again. One Friday night, I came home from work early, excited to surprise her with a family movie night. As I walked into the living room, I noticed Lisa's phone buzzing on the coffee table. A message popped up that made my heart drop. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Just finished grading those essays." It was from Ethan's tutor, Jake. I had met him a few times and thought he was a good guy, but who calls their tutor babe? I felt nausea wash over me. Curiosity piqued. I picked up the phone and opened her messages. What I found made my blood run cold. A string of flirtatious exchanges, filled with heart emojis and plans to meet up. I felt like I had been hit by a truck. The realization that my wife was cheating on me with my son's tutor was a punch to the gut. My mind raced with memories of the last few months, her excuses, her late nights, the way she'd look at me with that forced smile. It all made sense now. I needed to confront her. I was filled with a mix of rage and heartbreak, but I had to keep my composure for Ethan's sake. I waited for her to come home, packing back and forth, rehearsing what I would say. When she finally walked through the door, I was standing there, arms crossed, a storm brewing behind my eyes. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with emotion. She looked taken aback, confused. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. "Don't play games with me. I saw your messages with Jake." Her face went pale, and for a moment I thought I might see some remorse. Instead, she scoffed. "You're being ridiculous, Mark. It's just harmless flirting." "Harmless? You're cheating on me, Lisa." I yelled, the words escaping my lips like fire. She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "You're overreacting. You never pay attention to me anymore. I'm lonely." Her excuse hit me like a slap in the face. I had devoted myself to providing for her and our son, and she had the audacity to turn it around on me. The confrontation spiraled into chaos. She blamed me for everything, claiming I was neglectful, and tried to convince me that I was the reason she sought comfort elsewhere. I felt a whirlpool of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness. I had devoted my life to this woman, and in return she had betrayed me in the worst possible way. As my heart sank deeper into despair, I made a decision. I wouldn't allow her to hurt me or Ethan anymore. This was the beginning of my journey to reclaim my life and my son's happiness. Little did I know that this was just the start of a long, painful process filled with tough choices and unexpected revelations. The emotional turmoil would only intensify from here. After that explosive confrontation, I felt like I was living in a nightmare. The days that followed were a blur of anger and confusion. Lisa acted as if nothing had happened, going about her routine as though she hadn't just shattered our marriage. I couldn't wrap my head around her complete lack of remorse. That night, after our argument, I slept on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and disappointment. I spent hours replaying our conversations, the moments we shared, and the love we once had. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing not just my wife but my family. Ethan was oblivious, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between his parents. Every time he smiled or laughed, it was a painful reminder of what was at stake. The next few days were tense. I began to gather evidence of Lisa's infidelity. I knew I wouldn't confront her again until I had everything I needed. I started checking her phone and keeping tabs on her whereabouts. I discovered more messages with Jake, and it became clear this wasn't just a fling. There was a deeper connection. They exchanged intimate thoughts and plans for a future together. I felt sick to my stomach every time I saw their exchanges. One evening after putting Ethan to bed, I confronted Lisa again. "I know you're seeing Jake. This isn't just flirting anymore. You've crossed a line." She looked at me with that same annoyed expression. "You're being paranoid, Mark. I can't believe you're checking my phone. It's an invasion of privacy." "An invasion of privacy? You're having an affair. How can you justify this?" She shrugged nonchalantly. "You don't understand how hard it's been for me. You've been so focused on work, and I needed someone who could actually listen to me." Her excuses were infuriating. I felt a surge of anger that made me want to scream, but I held it back. I needed to stay calm and think clearly. I realized I had to take action. I consulted a lawyer who explained my rights regarding custody and separation. The thought of battling Lisa for custody of Ethan sent chills down my spine, but I knew I had to protect my son at all costs. With every passing day, my resolve grew stronger. I started documenting everything: Lisa's behavior, the messages I'd found, and her lack of involvement in our son's life. It felt like I was preparing for war, but this was war for my son's well-being. I was determined to ensure Ethan didn't suffer the consequences of Lisa's choices. As I executed my plan, I also began to change things around the house. I started taking on more responsibilities, preparing meals, and creating a more stable environment for Ethan. I wanted him to feel loved and secure amidst the chaos. I enrolled him in soccer and arranged playdates with his friends. I was determined to be the parent he could rely on. Then came the day of reckoning. I called Lisa into the living room and handed her a printed copy of the text messages I had collected. "You can't deny this anymore. You're making a fool of yourself and of us," I said, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. She couldn't even look me in the eye. "I was going to tell you," she finally muttered, but I didn't believe her. The guilt in her eyes was fleeting, quickly replaced by defensiveness. "I want a divorce, Lisa. I want full custody of Ethan," I declared, my heart pounding in my chest. Her reaction was one of shock and outrage. "You can't do that. He's my son, too." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "You've shown that you can't be trusted. I won't let you drag him into your mess." We argued back and forth, but I stood my ground. I felt a sense of liberation as I voiced my intentions. The emotional impact of those words was profound. I was taking control of my life and protecting my son. As I prepared for the custody battle ahead, I also began to think about what life would look like without Lisa. I pictured Ethan thriving in a stable environment, free from the toxicity that had seeped into our lives. I felt a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. I would fight for my son, and I would win. It was time to reclaim our lives and create a future filled with love and happiness. The journey ahead would be difficult, but I was ready. I had learned that sometimes you have to make the hardest decisions to protect what matters most. Once I made the decision to seek a divorce and full custody of Ethan, I knew I had to prepare for the battle ahead. I started to gather everything I could: texts, emails, and even witness testimonies from friends and family who noticed the changes in Lisa. I wanted to paint a clear picture of her behavior to the court and show that I was the more stable parent for Ethan. I enlisted the help of a lawyer named Jessica, who specialized in family law. She was sharp and understanding, and I could tell she genuinely cared about my case. Over coffee in her office, she explained the custody laws in our state. "The court typically favors the mother," she said, leaning back in her chair. "But if we can demonstrate that she's unfit, we can shift that balance in your favor." I nodded, my heart racing. "I just want to do what's best for Ethan. He doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this." Jessica assured me that we would build a strong case. "Keep documenting everything, Mark. I need you to be diligent. Every instance of her neglect, every time you've had to step up as a parent, this will all count in your favor." I took her advice to heart. Every time Lisa failed to show up for an event or left Ethan unattended while she went out with Jake, I jotted it down. I started to notice even more changes in her behavior. She began to argue with me over the smallest issues, often trying to twist the narrative to make me look like the bad guy. It was infuriating, but I remained focused on my goal: to protect Ethan. Meanwhile, I made it a point to spend as much time with my son as possible. I wanted him to feel secure and loved amidst the chaos that was our home. We played soccer in the backyard, built Lego castles, and watched movies together. My heart swelled every time he laughed or smiled, and I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in a long time. I could do this. I could be the father he needed. One weekend, I planned a trip to the zoo for Ethan and me, just the two of us. It was a chance to escape the tension at home and create happy memories together. As we walked through the exhibits, Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement. I could feel the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders as we watched the animals and shared popcorn. It reminded me of why I was fighting so hard. The love I had for my son was the strongest motivator I could ever have, but the peace was short-lived. That evening, after we returned home, Lisa confronted me. "You're playing the victim, Mark. You think just because you're doing fun things with Ethan, you can convince everyone you're the better parent." I was taken aback by her venomous tone. "This isn't about playing games. I'm trying to be there for him, unlike you. You don't get to dictate how I parent." She shot back, her frustration boiling over. It quickly turned into another heated argument, and I could see the coldness in her eyes. "Lisa, you need to understand something," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the rising anger within me. "I'm not going to let you hurt Ethan because of your choices. I'm done with your lies and games." Her expression shifted, and for a split second I thought I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "You think you can just take him away from me? I'm his mother." "I'm not taking him away from you. You're doing that yourself," I replied, my voice steady. "You've made your choices, and now you need to face the consequences." The argument left both of us shaken, but it solidified my resolve. I knew I couldn't let her manipulation get to me. I had to remain strong for Ethan. As the days turned into weeks, I continued my preparations for the custody battle. I began to feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had to balance being a single dad with preparing for a legal fight that could change our lives forever. The thought of going to court was daunting, but I kept reminding myself that I was doing this for Ethan. Then one evening I got a call from Jessica, my lawyer. "Mark, I have some news. We might be able to secure a mediation meeting with Lisa. It could be an opportunity to discuss custody arrangements without going to court." My heart raced, and I felt a mix of hope and anxiety. "What do you think? Is it a good idea?" "Honestly, it could be beneficial if you approach it calmly. Just remember to stay focused on Ethan's needs. It's not about winning, it's about what's best for him." As I hung up the phone, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe if I could reason with Lisa, we could avoid a bitter court battle. But deep down, I knew that Lisa's unpredictable nature might make this meeting more challenging than I anticipated. I began to mentally prepare for the mediation. I rehearsed what I wanted to say. I wanted to convey my concerns for Ethan, to show Lisa that I was willing to compromise, but only if it was in our son's best interest. Little did I know that this meeting would set the stage for the next phase of our tumultuous journey. The day of the mediation meeting arrived, and I felt a knot in my stomach as I walked into the conference room. Jessica met me at the door and gave me a reassuring smile. "You're going to do great," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. The room was stark and uninviting, with a long table and a few chairs. I took a seat, trying to steady my breathing. I glanced at the clock, nervously anticipating Lisa's arrival. When she finally walked in, I barely recognized her. She wore a crisp blazer and had styled her hair in a way that seemed almost theatrical. It felt like she was putting on a show for the mediator, someone who had to see through the facade. "Mark," she greeted, her tone icy as she took her seat across from me. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I could feel the animosity radiating from her. The mediator, a middle-aged woman with a calm demeanor, introduced herself and explained the process. "We're here to discuss custody arrangements for Ethan. I want to remind both of you that this is about what's best for him." I nodded, maintaining my focus. I knew this was my chance to present my case without the chaos of court. As the session progressed, the mediator encouraged us to express our thoughts and concerns. I spoke passionately about Ethan's needs, his schooling, his extracurricular activities, and the stable environment I could provide for him. "I've been there for Ethan every step of the way," I said, my voice steady. I want him to feel secure and loved. I don't want him to go through the emotional turmoil of seeing his mother prioritize her own desires over his well-being. Lisa's response was predictable. I've always been a good mother. You don't know what it's like for me. She snapped, her defensiveness rising to the surface. I had to find happiness outside of this marriage because you were never around. I'm the one who takes care of Ethan when you're at work. The irritation bubbled inside me. You're right, I work hard for our family, but that doesn't give you the excuse to betray our trust. You need to focus on our son instead of your own selfish needs. The mediator interjected, trying to guide the conversation back on track. Let's bring the focus back to Ethan. What would you both consider a fair custody arrangement? As the discussion continued, Lisa and I started to talk over each other, both passionate about our own perspectives. I could see that she was struggling to maintain her composure, and I could feel my resolve strengthening. I was doing this for Ethan, and I wouldn't let her manipulate the situation. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, the mediator suggested that we consider a shared custody arrangement with primary residence with me. Based on what I've heard today, it seems that maintaining a stable environment for Ethan is essential. Mark has shown that he's committed to being present in his son's life. I could see the color drain from Lisa's face. She was realizing that the walls were closing in on her. That's not fair. I deserve to have time with my son too. She protested, her voice rising. The mediator remained calm. Of course, and we can work towards a balanced schedule. However, the priority is Ethan's emotional well-being. It's clear he needs stability. Lisa's reaction was a mix of anger and desperation. This is all your fault, Mark. You're ruining our family. I took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. I didn't ruin our family, Lisa. You made that choice. I'm simply trying to do what's right for our son. The conversation continued, and I could tell Lisa's defenses were crumbling. She was grasping at straws, trying to salvage a situation that was clearly slipping away from her. I felt a mix of sympathy and frustration. I didn't want to watch her spiral, but I also couldn't allow her to manipulate me or Ethan any longer. After a few more back-and-forth exchanges, the mediator proposed a plan that involved primary custody with me and a reasonable visitation schedule for Lisa. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but I knew this battle wasn't over yet. Lisa would fight tooth and nail for any semblance of control, and I had to remain vigilant. As the meeting concluded, I walked out of the conference room feeling a mix of triumph and anxiety. I had taken a significant step towards securing a better future for Ethan, but I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. Over the next few weeks, we put the mediation agreement into action. I focused on keeping Ethan's routine stable while navigating Lisa's increasingly erratic behavior. She continued to send messages filled with accusations and attempts to guilt-trip me into changing the custody arrangement. It was emotionally draining, but I had to remind myself that I was doing this for Ethan. One evening, as I was tucking Ethan into bed, he looked up at me with his big brown eyes. "Daddy, are you and Mommy going to be okay?" His question tore at my heart. I pulled him closer, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're going to be just fine, buddy, I promise. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." As I kissed his forehead and turned off the light, I felt a wave of determination wash over me. I was prepared to face whatever lay ahead. I wouldn't let Lisa's choices dictate our lives any longer. I was ready to protect my son, no matter the cost. Little did I know that Lisa had one last card to play, and it would shake the foundation of everything I had fought for. The days turned into weeks, and as we settled into the new custody arrangement, I felt a fragile sense of stability beginning to form. Ethan thrived with the routine we had established, and I took pride in my role as his father. However, Lisa's responses to the mediation agreement only grew more erratic. One afternoon, as I was picking Ethan up from soccer practice, I noticed Lisa waiting near the field. My heart sank. She had that determined look in her eyes, one that told me she was about to stir the pot again. I approached her cautiously, trying to remain calm. "Mark, we need to talk," she said, her voice low and tense. "About what?" I replied, trying to gauge her intentions. "I thought we agreed on the visitation schedule." I want more time with Ethan. This is ridiculous. You can't just keep him from me. Lisa, you have your scheduled time with him. I can't change that just because you're feeling overwhelmed. You need to respect this arrangement for his sake. She huffed in frustration. You think you can control everything, don't you? You're using our son as a pawn. Stop with the accusations, I shot back, anger rising within me. This isn't about control, it's about what's best for Ethan. Your behavior has proven that you can't be trusted with him right now. Just as I thought the argument couldn't get any worse, Lisa's face twisted into a dangerous smirk. You think this is over, Mark? You don't know what I'm capable of. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean by that? But before she could respond, Ethan came running over, his face bright with excitement. Daddy, can we go get ice cream? I knelt down to his level, forcing a smile despite the tension in the air. Sure, buddy, just give me a minute with Mommy, okay? As Ethan ran back to his friends, I turned back to Lisa. What are you planning? Let's just say I have a few surprises in store for you, she replied, her voice dripping with malice. The look in her eyes sent alarms ringing in my head. I decided it was time to be on high alert. A few days later, my worst fears were confirmed. I received a call from Jessica, my lawyer, requesting a meeting. Mark, I need to discuss something important regarding Lisa, she said, her tone serious. When I arrived at her office, she had a grim expression on her face. I've received some troubling information. Lisa has filed a complaint against you, claiming you're unfit as a parent. She's trying to portray you as emotionally abusive. I felt the air leave my lungs. What? That's absurd. I've done everything to support Ethan. I know, but we need to prepare for a hearing. She has enlisted the help of a therapist who claims that you've been emotionally damaging to Ethan. We need to present a strong defense and prove that it's all a fabrication. I could hardly process what I was hearing. I felt anger, confusion, and fear all at once. How could she do this? This is nothing but a vindictive move. Jessica nodded, her expression sympathetic. We'll get through this, but you need to keep a level head. Focus on Ethan and continue doing what you've been doing. Gather any evidence that shows your involvement as a father. In the weeks that followed, things became increasingly tense as the hearing date approached. I doubled down on my efforts to support Ethan. I attended every soccer game, helped him with homework, and made sure he felt secure during this tumultuous time. I understood that the emotional toll of Lisa's accusations would be harder on him than anyone. One evening, as I was helping Ethan with his math, I noticed he seemed distracted. Hey, buddy, what's on your mind? I asked, setting the pencil down. Daddy, is Mommy mad at you? He asked, his voice small and uncertain. Not mad, just very confused right now, I replied gently. But I promise you're not in trouble. It's my job to protect you, and I'll always be here for you. He nodded but still looked worried. I wrapped my arms around him in a comforting hug. I needed him to know that despite the chaos, our bond was unbreakable. As the hearing approached, I met with Jessica regularly to prepare my defense. We collected testimonies from friends and family who could attest to my character as a father. I remained vigilant, knowing that Lisa would stop at nothing to try to regain control of the situation. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, I felt like I was walking into battle. I wore my best suit, hopping to project confidence, even though my insides were churning. I took a deep breath as I entered the courtroom, ready to face Lisa and her accusations head-on. The proceedings began, and I listened as Lisa's lawyer presented her claims. I could see Lisa sitting there, a smug expression on her face, as if she felt she had already won. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate the narrative any longer. When it was my turn to speak, I recounted everything: my love for Ethan, my commitment as a father, and how I had been there every step of the way. I shared stories of our time together, our bonding moments, and how I had tried to shield him from the turmoil of our marriage. I could see the judge's eyes narrowing as I spoke. I focused on the facts and kept my emotions in check. I knew this was my chance to show that Lisa's accusations were nothing but a desperate attempt to regain control. As the hearing continued, I felt a surge of hope. I had evidence on my side, and I believed in my role. As a father, I wouldn't let Lisa's lies define my relationship with Ethan. I was going to fight for our future. Little did I know, the judge's decision would change everything. As the hearing reached its climax, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My heart raced as the judge prepared to deliver her decision. I had poured my heart into my testimony, and I knew that this would determine the course of my life and Ethan's future. The judge, an older woman with a calm demeanor, looked down at the papers in front of her. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. After reviewing the evidence and hearing testimony from both parties, I find that the accusations made against Mr. Carter lack substantial merit. It is clear to me that he has been an involved and caring father to Ethan. A wave of relief washed over me, but Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief. I could see the anger simmering beneath her surface as the judge continued. Given the current circumstances, I am granting primary custody of Ethan to Mr. Carter. Lisa, you will have visitation rights, but I advise you to prioritize your son's well-being and avoid further conflict. I couldn't help but let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It was a significant victory, one that I had fought so hard for. As the judge banged her gavel, signaling the conclusion of the hearing, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. I glanced at Jessica, who smiled in approval, and then turned my gaze to Ethan, who was waiting outside the courtroom with my sister. I rushed to him, scooping him up in my arms. "We did it, buddy. You're going to be okay." Ethan's face broke into a big smile, and the sight of his joy filled my heart with an overwhelming sense of triumph. "Does that mean I get to stay with you all the time?" he asked, his eyes shining with hope. "Yes, you're going to be with me and we'll make sure to have lots of fun together," I replied, fighting back tears. As we walked out of the courthouse, I felt the burden I had been carrying start to lift. I had fought for my son and I had won. No longer would Lisa's betrayal dictate our lives. I took a moment to appreciate the small things, the sun shining, Ethan's laughter as he talked about the soccer games ahead and the promise of a fresh start. But Lisa's reaction was anything but graceful. As we reached the parking lot, I saw her storming towards me, her anger palpable. "You think this is over, Mark? You'll regret this," she shouted, her voice trembling with rage. I stood my ground, refusing to let her intimidate me any longer. "This is about Ethan, not you, Lisa. I suggest you start thinking about his well-being instead of your own ego." She glared at me, but I could see the flicker of desperation in her eyes. It was evident that her plan had crumbled, and she was left to face the consequences of her actions. I turned away, knowing I had to focus on what mattered most, Ethan. In the weeks that followed, I worked on rebuilding our lives. With the custody arrangement in place, Ethan thrived in the secure environment I had created for him. I encouraged him in school, cheered him on at soccer games, and made sure he knew he was loved unconditionally. The bond between us grew stronger, and I felt like I was becoming the father I always wanted to be. As for Lisa, her attempts to undermine me continued, but I was no longer afraid. I had the support of friends and family who reminded me of my worth as a parent. I knew that any further attempts to manipulate the situation would only push her further away from Ethan. One evening, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he looked up at me, his voice soft. "Daddy, I'm glad you're my dad." I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. "I'm glad too, buddy. I'll always be here for you no matter what happens." As I closed the door to his room, I took a moment to reflect on everything that had transpired. The betrayal, the pain, and the fight for custody had changed me. I had learned the importance of standing up for what I believed in and protecting my loved ones from harm. I had entered a dark chapter of my life, but now I was emerging into a new beginning, filled with hope and love. I would continue to be the father Ethan deserved, and I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. Through this journey, I learned that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most rewarding victories. I would always prioritize my son's happiness, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The love we shared was unbreakable, and that was the greatest victory of all.